We are designed for and consist of what we consider to be the top 10% of women in business. So, what does that mean? It means that the women that come to Athena are from organizations where they are amongst the top leadership. And that is whether it's in corporate America and beyond, or it is investors. So think private equity, venture capital, and think then also entrepreneurs, women who are creating businesses that will scale and grow. And ultimately, will need to be governed by a structure at the top of overarching leadership. And everything that Athena does and offers and engages in is about helping women become much stronger, more elevated, overarching stewards of business in the boardroom, in the C-suite, as investors, as CEOs. And we exist because for the reasons that we all already understand, which is that women are an economic force. We already are a huge part of society. These numbers are just US-based numbers, but this is true around the world in terms of the decisions that we make for the home, around healthcare and financial and purchasing, but also in the workplace, increasingly being really very fundamental economic drivers of the workplace, not just as contributors, but as breadwinners. But when it comes to the kinds of things we want to do at the top, we really, we would be just as well served to be named James and or Michael as we would to be a woman if we want to be a CEO. We have just as much of a chance to become a venture investor as any David, John, or Robert. And in the private company space, if we want to be a board director, there's only 7% of board director seats held by women. And we tend to think about public companies numbers, that women make up 20-some% of board seats, but that's only true in a sort of a small percentage of the whole. And if you're looking at companies with under a $50 billion market cap, we're only 15% or less of those. And then in the C-suite, we hold the greatest traction, but only at about 21% across the whole. So we're just not making progress. And the rare women that are at the top have a hard time amplifying their success because there's so few of them within any individual ecosystem, whether it's within a company or within a geography. And so we end up with this sort of sense of isolation and looking around and not seeing enough like ourselves. So by way of example, in San Francisco alone, and this is just looking at CEOs as one, sort of aspiration, there are 5,000 San Franciscos, but by the statistics, only 250 of them are women. So it would take 17 San Franciscos on a physical level to create what men have in one city. So this gives you sort of that indication of why it would be hard to create in-person solutions that are really effective. They're too small. The cohorts that are focused on regional solutions don't have enough girth within them to really make a big difference fast enough. And so it perpetuates slow progress. So really the best solution is one that is global, digital, virtual. And that's really where Athena has always been. So this isn't a COVID response strategy. We have been digital and virtual from almost the beginning, not because in response to anything external, but because we believe it's a fundamentally better way to create opportunity for women to advance and scale their impact and their access to top leadership potential than anything else. And so, while we're small numbers in regional frames or in an industry frame or within a one company frame, we are large numbers. Just in the US alone, over 600,000 women in VP level and above ranks at companies of 500 employees or more. So what we need is a wider crowdsourcing approach, and one that has figured out how to accelerate the power of really powerful women and is digitally and virtually and highly distributed, but has intimacy at its core. And so that's kind of the ethos of Athena and what we strive for. Athena is a digital platform. So when you become part of Athena, you log in and you have access to a community, which think about that as kind of like a walled garden around a LinkedIn, and a specialized LinkedIn, one where we're looking at each other's profiles from the perspective of a very senior leader, and we're seeing our bios, but also boards we serve on and our thought leadership that we offer. And in a very intimate sense, when this community wants to connect with each other, they have the option to do that in a very curated, white glove, warm introduction sort of way. So unlike, other platforms where you might reach out and say, hey, blindly, so-and-so, would you connect with me? Our community has what we call member success managers, personal chiefs of staff, who are behind the scenes making sure that the right connections are happening at exactly the right time for exactly the right need. So by way of example, in that context, women are looking to connect to others around things like understanding an industry that they may be considering. For example, if you are considering board service, oftentimes you'll join a board outside of an industry that you understand. Maybe they're looking to make a connection to a particular board or company that they have an interest in. And so they're looking for who has those connections into that. And they want some warm ways of reaching that. So a great example I love for this one is we have a member who's based in New York City. She's part of one of the top global entertainment companies in the world. And she grew up through the ranks of marketing. Now, so that's, industry entertainment, geography, New York City, role marketing. But what she's really interested in is board service in a different geography, more aligned with where she's ultimately retiring. And she's interested in a different industry. She wants hospitality. And how does she reach that when most of her real connections are in her geography, in her industry, and in her practice? So within the Athena community, there happen to be people who are on boards of big hospitality companies, and one of them lives in Canada, and she's on the board of a hospitality company in the Midwest. And so we can make those kinds of connections that help women get those warm introductions for informational interviews or just some coaching or some spot mentoring around industry, around interest, around phase. I'm already interviewing and I'm trying to get a sense of whether, I'm trying to make sure that I land this position. So for example, there again, we might make a connection between members around things like Karen Walker, CMO of Cisco, was interviewing for the board of Eli Lilly, large pharma company, and trying to figure out, will my children still love me if I join that board? So we connected her with Betsy Atkins, who joined the board of Wynn Resorts post Steve Wynn. And they talked about personal brand and managing personal brand and impacting and changing culture and how that happens and how you get to know through the interview process that you can do that. So those are the kinds of things that we do within community. And again, we believe that this virtual nature to who we are is incredibly important because it allows us to create powerful community among women that they would not otherwise have. The second thing that we're doing is around learning. So think of this as, sort of simulation for where we're headed. How do we really understand the space of overarching stewardship of business if we don't have the chance to actually engage with it? So we might engage with it as, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you're engaging it with it through the investment raise process, you're engaging with it with your investors, you have a board that's forming for you. But how do you practice the next level of where you're headed? Same with an investor. Same with an executive who's used to presenting to a board or hoping to get to that point to present to a board, but not used to being in the boardroom. Or if you are in the boardroom, how do you stay on top of what's going on and knowing kind of that the decisions you're making and the contributions you're bringing are similar to what your peers might be thinking and bringing at the same time. And so we have a learning environment that is designed to support that. And that learning environment is a combination of what we call virtual salons, as well as a learning library. So here's an example of some of the women that are part of Athena. I mentioned Betsy Atkins, who spent some time talking to Karen Walker before she joined the board of Eli Lilly. You can see the women of Athena come from incredible backgrounds. With some of these women have been on massive boards and significant boards for a number of years, whether it's Royal Bank of Scotland or Weight Watchers or MuleSoft and Forrester. Some of them joined those boards as a part of being with Athena and actually directly through Athena, like Yvonne at MuleSoft and Forrester. Some went from being executives in top-ranking roles in corporations to becoming entrepreneurs, like Caroline Say, who's on the board of Coca-Cola, but she's also now the CEO of her fledgling company that is only a few people, and has sought some venture funding. So this is an incredibly powerful community. We do something called virtual salons. You're experiencing this sensation right now with us of here we are on video together. We're having a discussion. In this case, Alison Davis, who's on the board of Royal Bank of Scotland, UMA, and Diamond Foods, as well as Pfizer, the largest fintech company in the world, is talking with us about how she built an innovation and technology committee for the Royal Bank of Scotland. We have very experienced board directors in this conversation. Patty Hatter is here. At the time, she was on the board of the largest gold mining company in the world, and Beatrice Infante on the boards of PriceSmart, the equivalent of Costco in Central and South America. And they're listening in and participating because they're trying to figure out how much of this they bring to their own boards. But then you have women who are not on boards who are participating to learn about that space themselves. And what we do is this is just actually showing you kind of boardroom insights, some of the things we talk about in that space, but we also do virtual salons around executive leadership, entrepreneurialism, investing. We're doing 2 to 3 of these a week now. So we're doing a lot of these, and then we take those and we translate them into the right kind of material for our learning library. So you'll see when you're part of Athena, inside Athena, we're launching this brand new look and feel. But the topics that we talk about in our salons are then repurposed for our library so women can engage with the content whenever they want to. And it's also edited and more finalized as final content, if you will. So they can participate in these live dialogues, but they can also come and participate in content offline on their own. So I was, sort of expressing to you what Athena is about. It's about community, as I described to you, in that sense of every woman can discover every other woman and learn about her background and request introductions. Women can also participate in topics and gatherings and a news feed. Finally, for those who are seeking opportunities, that's the third component of this platform, which is board seats and advisory roles and CXO roles. Everything that comes to us comes to our members. They get to see their likely percent match to those, and they get to engage with those and ask to be considered for those if they're interested.
Hi, I'm Karen Cohn. As just a little background, until a couple of years ago, I was the general manager of Microsoft's worldwide financial services. And prior to that, I was CEO of the advisory research firm called Tower Group and served on the Tower Group board of directors. I also served as an executive director on the Gartner International Board. And my role is more to engage, support in any way I can. And I'll mention a few examples of what I do there. One is Coco already mentioned, which is staying up to date, continuous learning, what's hot in the organizations, what's hot for boards, for stakeholders, for employees. How do I stay up to date when I'm working with boards and when I'm advising these firms? The reality of it is I'm not a kid anymore. So the opportunity for me to interact with what's hot for millennials, what's hot for a board member, these are things that I need to keep up to date on. So that's sort of my purpose, and getting insights from others, board members, as well as aspirational leaders, such as many of you are. But very importantly, it's about networking and relationships. For those of you who've been around for a while, I think you know that when you hire people or when you look for people, how important is it that somebody recommends them, someone knows them, you're part of the network. A trusted person says this person's worth the time. That's really key. And this is a big challenge for us as women. We, as women, don't have the kind of centuries old boys club that so many of the men have. And that's a reality. A great example of this is I worked with the Masters Fund, and one of the things we've learned is that only about 2% or 2.2 billion out of 130 billion in 2018 of VC funding went to all women entrepreneurs. And oh, by the way, only about 15 billion out of 130 billion went to founding teams without at least one woman. And most of the people there, the money goes to people where there's a relationship, where there's a network. Athena Alliance is helping us build that network. One, though, I think is important is something that you've heard probably called unconscious bias. We as women, as well as men, are often guilty of unconscious bias. I didn't realize it until very late in my career. I realized that the most of my career, I've worked with men. My environment has been a male environment. The result of that was that I wanted to add women to my team, but I didn't think a lot of women did well in interviews. And it took me a while to realize that the reason why was I was used to men behaving the way they behave, and I had an unconscious bias against women. We as a collective need to understand that unconscious bias, create an awareness with our male colleagues, with men, and with ourselves. The Athena Alliance helps change those kinds of things. I work through stories. I was asked how I give back to the Athena community. I do some mentoring on various things, could be, anything from business to how I stayed married for 45 years and raised 3 kids while working full time. It could be that. So I tell stories, they get published in the Athena blog, and lessons that I've learned over the years on things like executive presence, sponsorship, fail fast, and I'm happy to share those with anyone who's interested. I love to tell my stories.
So I was an institutional investor for 25 years and ran the #1 fund in the world in 1999. And that's not typically the background of a board director. So when I first applied, I had a little help from a friend of mine who is a board director, Kimberly Alexi, who kind of helped my application get the proper attention. And so then I was welcomed in, and I did find that it is a little bit of a tougher background because it's less traditional than what people are looking for. The reason that I joined at the time was because there was a CEO that was talking to me about joining the board, and I really wanted the support of Athena to help me along that process, help me along the application. That company ended up 40% of their revenues came from IBM, and their counterpart at IBM changed, and so they needed to bring in a board director who worked at IBM just to kind of shore up 40% of their revenues. So that entire opportunity went away. In the meantime, part of what Athena was showing me is, yes, I have a non-traditional background, but perhaps I could do some other things that would increase my chances to get aboard and kind of change the direction of my life as well. So I ended up kind of having that in the back of my mind, getting offered to co-found a blockchain company. I come back to Athena and say, well, actually, I'm not now wanting to have my CV and that entire package be about board membership. I want to have it be about being a thought leader and an executive and have training in that. And the entire system of Athena shifted for me and completely supported me in an entirely different goal. And they were there for me in the way that I wanted. So it was amazing to see. And I think in this time when we have so much uncertainty about all of our futures, having an organization that can kind of, I mean, I have absolute comfort that whatever I tell them I'm going to do tomorrow, they're going to pivot with me immediately. So, and then it's always a pivot of complete support and figuring out how they can make it work. So, and I've had a ton of different interactions. I co-wrote a white paper with Coco just because I was on a salon, and I thought, wow, I think that statement that Coco made is so important. I think more people should hear it. So I reached out and we co-wrote a white paper about it. And it's really about the feminine archetype and how that's more important than ever. And we've clearly seen that with the reactions of companies in COVID. And the feminine archetype on boards. And so the second thing I'll talk about, which kind of is around COVID too, are salons. So I love the salons. I can't get enough of them. I listen to everyone that I can. And right as the entire kind of COVID was breaking here in, I believe it was early March, I got on a salon and Coco was asking different board members what they were seeing. And it was a number of board members of very large Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 100 companies sharing what they were doing with cash balances, and of course they were sharing things that are not secret, but at the same time, like these general ideas of what they're seeing. And so if you're an executive, if you're a board member and you're part of Athena, you also get to see that. And especially if you're a new board member, you can automatically have access to know what's happening as things are changing right as they're happening. So I thought that just incredible to be able to have that kind of access, and I wouldn't have it anywhere else but from Athena. And the final thing that comes to mind is the network and how that interacts with pivoting and your own path. And when I came in, I was just saying, all I care about is blockchain. And so they connected me with Allison Davis, who happens to be on 4 public company boards. And she's also the co-founder of Blockchain Capital. And she's written a book on blockchain, just like you couldn't have a higher end person. And she gave me a ton of her time, super, super nice, connected me with her husband to do a talk as well. And a number of other people that I was connected with. And then as I pivoted on my course, the latest thing that I was working on was to help this AI company that I thought had the right algorithm to model the COVID virus and to help them get connections with people in healthcare. And immediately Athena was at my side, helping me, making connections, and we had terrific connections from that. So it almost doesn't matter what you want, Athena can deliver that network to you.
I'm Joanna Furlong. I lead the member success team. For those of you who don't know or who don't experience, not only is it a one-to-one relationship where this team of member success managers or your personal chief of staffs really look out for you, but we also do that in the background. So we meet every week, sometimes a couple times a week, and we share insights with each other for your benefit. So for example, if someone in our community wants to teach at a university or write a book or learn about a certain type of investing, we'll say to each other, not only go into our database, but we'll say to each other, who would be a great fit for this member? So there's a lot of collaboration behind the scenes and even with our coaches on your behalf. So member success managers help our members through connections. And everyone has their sweet spot. So some of our members love the connection aspect. They might be traveling in non-COVID times and they just want to meet someone for coffee or for lunch and really just have that networking opportunity. They might want to learn about another industry. They might be onboarding in a new role. So think about if you're going from a CMO to a COO role or first-time CEOs. We can help make all those transitions a lot easier for you by connecting you to other members. We had one member come to us and say that a Chinese company was going to be IPOing in the US and she needed help with that. And we were able to support her in that regard. We can support you beyond just coaching. What else do you want to do in your life? We want to hear it all. Are you a busy mom who's trying to do the work-life balance? We'll connect you to another member who understands. Are you in tax season? We have a lot of members who work in that industry and you're overwhelmed. We'll support you to someone just to talk to. If you're onboarding in a board and you're worried about the industry and what that's going to do to your reputation, perhaps, we'll connect you to someone. So it's a lot of connections. We also get a lot of requests for resources. So members might be preparing for an interview and it's what kinds of things should I be thinking about? And we have our member success team curating resources, asking behind the scenes, going to coaches sometimes, going into our learning library to pull those resources for you and to help you prepare. And then also, I would say the third main theme is accountability. So I know that some members love having a monthly call with their member success manager just to make sure they stay on track with their coaching, their goals. If there's any updates to their career or their life, we want to know about it. So we collect this information in phone calls. We'll do personal overviews of our platform for you. And then also we have an intake form. So if your goals change throughout the year, we want to know so that we can stay on the ball for you. With that said, we have 4 of our member success managers on the phone. What do you like most about supporting our members?
I love that I get to interact with and get to know so many just incredible, powerful women. And really, I love getting to understand what's important to them, what their real challenges are, and more than that, their personalities and their communication styles and how they're going to leverage our connections and our resources best so that I can make really specific, tailored connections for them, provide them with the right resources, the right time, pair them with the right coaches who are going to be good matches for them, and make sure that they're really having a valuable experience. So also helping with, obscure connections, understanding the nuances of their business and their experience and how I can really make valuable contributions throughout their membership.
When I think about white glove service, for me, it has come to mean getting to know my members. So really being there for them, understanding what they need, kind of joining them on their journey to the boardroom and knowing, sort of being able to predict what they might need and also reacting to any requests that they have along the way. I always try to be approachable and reliable for my members so that they feel comfortable to come to me and confident that I will deliver on their requests.
So much of what we do is connecting members to other members. What have you experienced as far as the value there that members get from that?
I think the benefit of making warm introductions between our members is that it provides a meaningful context that might not be there otherwise when they're just reaching out without that warm introduction. And I think what that helps do is encourage them to engage in a more natural way with each other. And during my time with Athena, I have made many connections between members, and I've witnessed the alliance between women within our community grow stronger through those connections.
I think that what I enjoy the most about supporting our members is really being able to accompany them through their journey as well and help them see what their hurdles are and kind of help them beforehand as well to overpass those hurdles. And really getting to know what their needs are and what they're expecting and seeing how much they enjoy being able to finish each part of their journey through Athena. It's really great. And also being able to see them really enjoy these connections that we make, because it's amazing the feeling that they have really joining in this community of female leaders that are just really looking to help each other out and grow. And it's such a wonderful feeling to just be a little small part of that and see everything grow.
I've always liked helping people. And I think the experience for me has been really rewarding in the sense that it's really unique to have this community, this special community, this exclusive community of women who are trying to be their best, and they're trying to get to the top and really help steer these companies and the country in a lot of respects in positive directions. And I just think it's phenomenal that I get to be a part of that and help in any way that I can with that. I recently had a member who, she's doing a podcast. She's putting together a series of a podcast she's doing on companies like this one that have built a completely remote platform. And so, so that was very interesting to help her out with that.
Nice.
And it's been very rewarding to, again, help with this very tight-knit, exclusive community and help all of these women get to where they want to be and achieve their goals, and to just help in whatever capacity that I can possibly help.
There's a couple of different ways to look at coaching. One is around the goal, so the goal being, how do I get that board seat? Or the goal being, how do I get into that C-suite? And so there's this goal-oriented way of looking at coaching, which is, how do we get you there? What are the steps and the mechanisms that are going to get you there? There's also then potentially the written articulation of who you are. How do you put pen to paper to describe your incredible career in a way that articulates who you are as an overarching steward of business? Your bio, your CV, your LinkedIn. And then the third is, how do you transform the way you even see yourself? The really important thing is how you show up, who you are, and how you are able to express the value that you bring outside of the domain that you grew up in. You as an overarching steward of business. And that's transformation, right? I mean, it's really about understanding broadly what makes you special in this space, what makes you a thought leader, what kind of thought leadership you can bring, how you stand strong and confident and clear and articulate on the right stages. And stages can be many things. It can be a boardroom, it can be a real stage, it can be a key negotiation moment. But how do you make sure that you're showing up in a way that makes it clear to everyone else that you're not just a great domain leader, but you are an overarching steward of business. You belong in the C-suite, you belong in the boardroom, you belong as an investor, you belong as a CEO entrepreneur. And so that's where we felt from the beginning, it was really important as an organization, not just to offer an incredible platform for community building and learning and access to opportunity, but also, just as importantly, to offer you the coaching that will help make sure you're differentiated, you stand out, and you win. Because there's many great people you're going to compete against, including all of your peers and friends in Athena. So how do you make sure that you are best positioned to get what you want? And so that's what our coaching is all about. We do it in a virtual world, not because of COVID, but because we believe that that's the best way to reach the most women in wherever they are and to connect talent in the best ways possible. Our women are not all in major metropolitan hubs. They're in small, more rural areas. They're on the road all the time when we're allowed to be on the road. They're traveling, they're commuting, they've got big jobs. And so the coaching that they need from us has to happen in a dynamic virtual world that gives them a lot of space to experience it when and how is best suited for them.
We used to have a very linear architecture to our coaching, step by step by step. And what we've realized hearing member feedback is that they really want more enriching experiences with just a few key coaches. So now we have journey planning, and that's where you work. If you're an aspiring director, that's where you work with a board selection expert, someone who is in your corner that you can go to for up to 4 hours throughout the year. And if you're a rising executive, someone who's looking more for that promotion, to become a stronger leader, to get into the C-suite, we also have coaching for that as well. And that one it's quite different than what the aspiring director goes through. It's much more custom, I would say, in the sense that it gets a little bit deeper. And then we also have transformation coaching, where again, you're working with one coach for up to 4 hours for the year, to become stronger in how you show up, to become a stronger thought leader.
I'm an executive leadership coach. I'm based up here in Seattle, but I also founded a boards program to get women on boards of directors. So that's always in the background, although my love is rising executives. So I can always help people think about a future on boards, even if they're maybe one step out. In general, though, I work with people who want to move to the next level. And so I help them to sort of map out what that would take. So that might be raising their visibility, it might be making connections, it might be building confidence and authenticity. I do spot coaching on issues. I sometimes am a brainstorm partner. If you think about, you want to get your name out there, what would you write about? All of this is part of building a personal leadership platform. You know, how do your strengths and your values and your goals combine to get you where you want to go? If somebody's having an issue with a manager or really needs to solve a problem, I'll do spot coaching. People get 4 hours and I'll say, what would you like to do with this time? And then I'll throw out some options if they're not exactly clear what might help them get to the next level. I think the backbone is the idea of a personal leadership platform. What do people know you for? You know, if you've got a team of directs, how do your values play out with them? How do your strengths play out with them? And how does that fit with your goals? And so I have sort of a whole set of exercises that we can do if that's what appeals. You know, if maybe you're an introvert and you need to make more connections, we could work through that as well.
My name is Christy Avali, and I am a transformational coach with Athena. I am a board certified coach as well as a communications consultant. So I like to describe the way I work with my clients is I kind of walk a fine line between being a coach and truly believing that my clients have all of their best, they have all of their own answers. They're an expert in their own lives. And I ask questions in a way to bring out those answers in themselves. And I'm also a consultant, so I can look at how they're saying things or the stories they might be telling and can really be directive in how to bring out their authentic voice in a way that's really going to be impactful. Walking that fine line is important. And I think the golden rule of coaching is you meet your clients where they're at. So every client relationship and conversation is going to be different depending upon the needs of the client. So I have clients that already know what their thought leadership ideas are, and they really want to get to articulating their elevator pitch in a way that's going to be most impactful in those high stakes moments that matter. So we look at storytelling, we look at executive presence, managing Q&A, those sorts of things, really kind of tactical things. And I have clients who don't know what their thought leadership ideas are. They want to be a thought leader. And so we mine for values. We look at their passions. We look at what they're good at and what they want to be bringing forth into the world and help them find those talking points that are going to get them excited. And then putting the communication skills around those points once we find them. That's probably the easiest way to articulate, how I work with most of my clients. I do spot coaching, like Kate. Something might come up in leadership that has nothing to do with thought coaching, and then we'll talk about that. So really, I leave it open to the client to direct where our conversation is going to go.
My name is Hilary Wick, and I am an executive voice and presence coach. And so what that means specifically for you as Athena members is that if we have the opportunity to work together, I'm going to do a really deep drill down on how the ways in which your verbal and nonverbal cues are creating perceptions about not only who you are, but the value that you're bringing to the table, and thus the opportunities that you are ready for. I have a deep background in behavioral psychology. I also coupled that with my background in somatic sciences and the psychology of influential communication and the psychology of body language, to merge with my first career as a voiceover talent. So I did commercials for companies like AT&T, Toyota, McDonald's. If you've had a television, there's a good chance you've heard my voice, but also sang backup for all kinds of major label artists that you would recognize. A few, LL Cool J, Kelly Clarkson, Idina Menzel, so all over the map. But what I really understood was that there was a finite connection between the ways in which we show up, both verbally and non-verbally, that then ties into our ability to create connection, trust, believability, and buy-in with other people. And I put this theory to the test many years through my recording career, where it was just me and my voice and a message, right? So Christy was talking about your elevator pitch, right? It could be answers to questions that we're going to commonly get during the board interview process. Not only what content can we create to really have language that lands, but how do we deliver this in a way that taps into that 90 percentile of the brain that's responsible for creating people to move into action, right? Those feelings, those perceptions, those things that aren't necessarily just the language, but again, how we are saying it, so that when we're coming into the interview, we don't just know who we are are standing in that value, and we are owning that that asset that we have the opportunity to bring to a board seat, so that, again, our value is felt, our confidence is definitely unquestionably there, and yeah, we can make people sit back and say, holy smokes, yeah, I want you a part of my team. So that is what I do, a bit about my specialty and my background, and it is transformational work. It really is. With the psych part of it that Christy was also mentioning, we are working with you from an inside out perspective. We want to holistically support you, and that's one of the things that Athena is so good about, is meeting everyone where they are, having that white glove approach, and literally taking you as a whole person. Because if you truly want to lead, which all of us are wanting to do, that has to be from in here out. They are intrinsically linked. So we really take a comprehensive approach at making sure that you are showing up as the leader you are really meant and deserving to be.
I think what's interesting too, from my experience in talking to so many CEOs, and most all of them being men, and how quickly they jump to coaching, and how many of them actually have a personal coach, and how easy it is for them to make that something that the company invests in for them, because they realize they need that sounding board. And it's actually more difficult for women historically to pull that trigger, that somehow we feel like it's a luxury, that somehow we feel like it's something that, is a nice to have, and we'll get to it after we've done all these other things for everybody else. And it's not. When you get to this realm where you really want to be so much more, and we're also so complicated by this point. We've done so many things in our lives that we're just incredibly complicated. How do you distill that? How do you make that something that really shines? And I think one of the things that's interesting as I think about women that have been speaking in totality, because every one of them, with the exception of Christy, who's newer, has coached me. And it's interesting to, early days, I thought of Hilary as a voice coach, and I realized that there's so much psychology in voice, and that the psychology in your head and the who you are comes out in your voice. And even in subtle ways we don't realize, when we use uptones and questions and things that express our anxieties, express our uncertainties, all these things, And it's really not just voice coaching. It's never just leadership coaching. It's never just stage coaching. It's also integrated, which is why you're also hearing the overlap between the various different women. They may have a focus or sort of an angle that they came into coaching with, or an area that they sort of are most interested in. There is a ton of overlap in what they do. And in different moments, I've received so much value from every single one of you. In total, we have supported 101 board seats, and 55 of those were member support. 73% of those 55 were public companies. We've supported 40 direct board placements. That's where boards come to us and say, hey, can you help us bring a woman to our board? 35% of those were public, 65% of those were private. And 6 indirect, meaning like NACD came to us and said, hey, we're supporting Bose and we need a woman for that board, as you know, we need some female candidates, and we ended up recommending the woman who joined. So in total, 46 there. And the dynamic in those indirect is the same as the direct, 40% public, 60% private.